We're raising a 9 million seed round. I've raised investment before, but certainly not at that level. And 9 million seed, as you can imagine, is quite a lot. We've not had any investment prior to this, and we're commercial. It's been quite a journey. But when we initially went out there to look for investment, there was a lot of gasps. Sorry, you want how much? Seed? Have you raised before? No. And so there's a lot of investment houses, VCs, etc., that don't really didn't really understand back then exactly how, from a clean tech or climate tech perspective, they're capital intensive businesses. You know, we build hard tech. It's not a desk-based operation. It is very capital intensive, which is why we raise such large amounts. I remember we were first raising 3 million. I remember pitching to Scottish VCs and them saying, yeah, that's a bit too much. After about 6 months, somebody said, well, have you tried the US? So we went to the US. I remember the first conversation, the guy said to us, 3 million. We were like, how about 6? You're not going to do anything with that here. So then we reassessed everything. We had a few more conversations.
That's insane.
I know, it's crazy, 9 mil. And as soon as we said 9 mil, we got an offer pretty much straight away. And now that we've got a lead.
From the US?
From the US. Well, it was a Middle East-based fund, but yes, from the US. It was in dollars.
It's like night and day though, isn't it? Like the investment culture in the US versus like UK and Europe.
Yeah.
Wow.
I spent quite a bit of time in Silicon Valley. I remember when I first pitched, it was a different business I was pitching a couple of years ago that led into the carbon capture business. We still have a biotechnical business where we take food waste and create a circular economy. At the end of it, you get 4 different technologies combined, like microalgae, spirulinas, etc. Due to regulation issues in the UK, it was going to be 2 years of R&D and all the rest of it. We just couldn't do it. But when I pitched that in Silicon Valley, almost every single investor we spoke to after that was interested in it, one of the technologies in there was carbon capture, because we produced a lot of carbon in one of the processes. And that's when we started researching carbon capture technologies. Yeah. Somebody said, have you spoken to Professor Peter Styring at the University of Sheffield? And we were like, no. But as soon as we started researching his work, we thought, oh my God, how has he not commercialized this? And we listened to our investors, and that's really important. Listen to what your investors are saying. You know, if it's the odd 1 or 2 and they haven't really understood your business, then again, listen and say, why didn't they understand my business? And I think that's what people failed to do.
Yeah.
Well, if I pitch to 200 investors, one of them is going to say yes. And that mentality needs to go. You need to be getting every single pitch right the first time. And we listened to our investors. They came back and said, this is a really interesting business, but tell us about the carbon capture. And we didn't really know much about the carbon capture. One investor said, I'm really interested in what you're doing, but it's a little bit too far ahead for me. However, if you spin out or do anything with the carbon capture, come back to me. I'm interested. And we came out of that meeting and we thought, guys, we're going to have to commercialize this carbon capture technology somehow. So that's when we approached the university and we said, look, we want to spin this company out. We want to create this business. And we just kind of put aside all the biotechnical stuff. We'll come back to it one day, but the world isn't ready for it yet. And we focused our attention because that was the feedback that we were getting. So for me, one of the most important lessons we learned was listen to what your investors, take the cues. When you say 3 million and they raise their eyebrows, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong or right, but maybe you're asking in the wrong place. You need to be able to justify every single number you put on that financial model. That has been an exercise and a half because finance isn't my strength, but I've had to learn it because I need to know the answers from a addressable market, from a total market perspective, and obviously being with global ambitions, we've had to look at the global market and where the opportunities are. We recognise the UK may not necessarily be the best place to be, but certainly other regions will look at the UK for expertise. If we've managed to achieve something in the UK, it is seen as very doable. I remember the Department of Business and Trade said to me, come back to us when you got your lead investor. If you can get a UK lead investor, then you'll have no problem getting anyone to follow from all over the world because the standard of the due diligence that's done here is exceptionally high. So anybody that's raising, particularly in the UK or US investment is typically good to get in terms of a lead because of the due diligence and the fact that other regions will look to them as it's thorough. So we are happy to follow.
Beena, I've got to ask one question before we wrap up the podcast. How did you guys commercialize this idea while being bootstrapped? It sounds insane.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some grant money. We haven't really had the grant money in yet, but we have managed to access some grant money finally. The biggest support for us has been, I launched the business in December 2022. It was the first press release that went out, and I was quite reluctant because I'm not really a social media person, but having had the discussions, we were like, if we don't tell people about what we're doing, then nobody's going to know. Investors are not going to be interested. Clients are not going to. Ultimately, you need to show your investors that you have this client base, where you have this sales pipeline behind you. How do you get that? So we pushed ourselves out. We got a press release out, made some bold statements. In the first press release, we said we were looking to achieve 1 billion in revenue over the next 10 years. That's actually conservative given our projections right now. But obviously the first thing it did, it raised a lot of eyebrows. And then that's when investors saw these press releases and we actually got contacted. So that press release went out on the 5th of December, 2022. On the 6th of December, 2022, I got an email from a strategic partner and investor from Hong Kong. And he said, I've been reading up, want to learn a bit more, had a conversation with him the next day, told him about this Flutichem project that we weren't allowed to go public with, but it was coming. And he said, I want to fund it. I want to fund the project. So we got a convertible loan note from them. They're phenomenal. They're our strategic partners in Hong Kong. We've just shipped another commercial capture system out to them. We've already got multiple potential sales with very large organizations, because that's where most of from a net zero carbon emissions, all the big corporates based here in the UK, US, a lot of their supply chain is in Asia. And if we can decarbonize those factories
from source.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where our Hong Kong partners come into play. They're obviously investors as well as strategic partners. They gave us $1 million in convertible loan note. In all honesty, we've drawn down on maybe a quarter of it. We didn't need it because we were so lean. When you've got such a small team working on the business, it's amazing what you can achieve. People think you need hundreds of employees to deliver these big. You don't. It is cheaper to do it, have your own teams, rather than we had to use a lot of consultants and external engineers because we didn't have those teams. But we had to deliver on this project because we knew this was our one and only opportunity to be commercial very quickly.